But then on the other side of the house, we're able to apply the knowledge and skills of our pilots in an environment where we get to, inspect and help with maintaining assets across like energy and civil infrastructure, so that we can help our customer help their customers stay up and running. So whether it's electricity, whether it's telecom, um, gas, wind turbines, solar fields, we want to make sure that their customers stay happy.
Welcome to the New World Podcast, where we delve into the ever changing and accelerating pace of global change and its impact on our lives. I'm your host, John Paul Flores, broadcasting live from the New World Studio. Today, we're diving into the world of AI and automation. As an enthusiast and expert in lead generation, I will guide you through understanding and leveraging these technologies for your business and for your personal use. And don't forget, AI and automation might be unstoppable forces, but that doesn't mean you are powerless. Tune in to learn how to make them work for you and not the other way around. But first, let's meet our guest. One. In this episode of Welcome to the New World Podcast. In this episode, we're excited to have Bronwyn M, CEO of SEO Air and Airversity. Talk about a catchy name. As a FAA Part 107 pilot and drone pro, Bronwyn is a leader in UAV technology. We will discuss whether the transition from global consumer goods to pioneering UAV advancements, explore cutting edge UAV platforms, and gain her insights on the future of aerial technology. Bronwyn, it's a pleasure to have you on the show.
Thank you so much. I'm so happy to be here, John Paul.
By the way, before we begin on the in-depth questions, because I do have some, do you mind giving us a quick intro on who Bronwyn is, what's your experiences, what's your expertise, and what keeps you busy these days?
Absolutely. Well, I am right now, as you mentioned, running two companies. One is Zeo Air, and Zeo is a new drone manufacturer, making American-made drones, smart drones, building them primarily for infrastructure, inspection, and mapping. And they can also be used in government work like police and fire. And the other company is Airversity, and Airversity has two parts to it. One side is professional drone pilot training for industrial, commercial, and public safety pilots, getting them prepared with the FAA Part 107 exam, as well as flight training and other sensor training and certifications. We also have another side of the company, which is called Air Echo, and that's where we conduct our drone services and our data analytics when we do inspection work and mapping work for sectors like utilities, energy, telecom, also civil infrastructure, which would include bridges, highways, roadways, and dams. And then we do climate, environment, and disaster. So I'm a pretty busy pretty busy lady right now.
You know, before you've worked on your companies now, you have worked, correct me if I'm wrong, in PNG and Coca-Cola.
That is
Is
correct.
that right?
Yes.
From a not just a well-established company and also a well-established industry, Coca-Cola and P&G, they're genuinely has household names. What made you make what made you want to make the leap from that kind of industry to a well-established company to a very young industry?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. I did a lot between my corporate career and now, and I think I wanted to try something different. I wanted to be an entrepreneur. I recognized that I had been working for so long for other people that I didn't really know what my real skill sets were outside of that environment. I knew very well what I could do within those walls, but outside of that, how creative was I? How um, uh, industrious was I? How innovative was I? And I thought, I want to try this under my own steam. And so I had some other entrepreneurial ventures. I did work at a few other much, much, much smaller companies for, from time to time. And I worked at the university level for just a little while. And then I became an innovation consultant, working with Fortune 500 companies on future proofing strategies. And when drones came up, excuse me, as an opportunity for civilians to get engaged from a commercial perspective, I said, this is my chance because I always wanted to work in aviation and aerospace. I wanted to be a fighter pilot, I wanted to be an astronaut, and women couldn't fly fighters when I came out of high school. So going to the military academy could, if I was accepted, could have meant um, that I got to fly other aircraft, but I thought, I want to go and a different path, and I did that. And then as you mentioned, I worked for these other amazing companies, and but this was my chance to really jump into aviation and aerospace, and boy, did I jump right into it. Full speed ahead, both feet at the same time, and so had a high learning curve, but it's been exciting, and I think it will continue to be exciting.
From what you've mentioned, it seems like from early on in your career, you already are in love in aviation. So when you transitioned, is that the main motivator on why you wanted to build a company in that space, or was there any other factors between that time and before you change industry that made you want to build in a drone industry?
Yeah, I think with my love for aviation and aerospace, and although I had been working in innovation, working with all new technologies and working with companies on thinking about how to be prepared for the future, um, I did some of that when I worked for some of those companies. But this was like a new frontier. It was a new place to go, a new place to build, a new place to develop, and it didn't have as many constraints, if you will, from a this is how we've always done it perspective. With companies that are very, they're older, they've been around, they know how to go to market. This was, hey, we're all figuring this out together. Now, granted, we are governed by an agency, so we have very tight regulations via the FAA, but it was a chance to, just kind of spread my wings, no pun intended, and learn, but at the same time contribute. And because I have this passion in this space, it worked out.
Is it fun that it's not just a new industry for you, but it's also basically, as you said, kind of like a wild, wild west where there's no rules, besides the FAA, of course.
Yeah. Yeah, no, there are a lot of rules and regulations, quite a few. We've all started flying under the Part 107 regulations, which govern how we operate in the national airspace. And so we have to ensure that we stick by those rules because as you're entering into the national airspace, you've got to make sure that you maintain the first directive, which is safety, because there's already so much aircraft, in the sky. We don't want to contribute to becoming a hazard and causing any kind of stress on other pilots and or creating situations that could become potentially dangerous because things happen so fast because aircraft is moving so quickly, um, and weather impacts that. So you've got a lot to think about when you're flying. People, a lot of hobbyists that just go buy a drone and get up, and we encourage that. We also encourage them to take the FAA trust exam if you're going to do it as a hobbyist. That way you understand the rules, so that you can fly safely. But as you're doing it professionally, you've got to go, a bit above and beyond to make sure that um, you are within a certain set of of regs, regulations, and you stay within those. So it's the Wild West in a sense from a business perspective because you get to go and create, new things that you see that are gaps in the market, like, oh man, here's an opportunity for that and that. And a lot of, the customer base is also young, across all the different industries that are using drones, agriculture, cinematography. So it's growing, um, but it's there's a lot to be learned here. But yeah, it's new, and we all get to contribute in unique ways as we learn what all this looks like as we move into the future.
In your opinion, what makes CEO, correct me if I'm pronouncing it wrong, CEO Air, yeah,
Zio, uh-huh.
what makes it unique than other drone companies?
Well, Zio is in its infancy as a manufacturer,
Yeah.
so it's new, and we've got some secret sauce there that we can't share yet in a public setting, but hoping to add um, equipment and solutions that American operators are looking for, with high performance and other capabilities. So we think that's a differentiator. But this is a really big market with a lot of opportunity. So, we hope to be one of the, major contributors in this space. Our other company, Airversity, um, we since we were offering both training on one side of the company and then services on the other side, we're able to provide a very comprehensive approach to the industry because we've got, amazing teachers and instructors. So we're thinking about all the, the latest regulations. We're thinking about all the latest technology, and sensors and how all that works together so that we can ensure that we're training and consulting our clients properly. But then on the other side of the house, we're able to apply the knowledge and skills of our pilots in an environment where we get to, inspect and help with maintaining assets across like energy and civil infrastructure, so that we can help our customer help their customers stay up and running. So whether it's electricity, whether it's telecom, um, gas, wind turbines, solar fields, we want to make sure that their customers stay happy. Because if our infrastructure here has aged significantly, and I'm very excited about the new infrastructure funding because there's so much that needs to be upgraded. So if we can help people stay safe, if we can understand the impact of weather and climate on infrastructure, that's a really big game changer because all of these things are changing right before our eyes. The climate and the weather are becoming a lot more intense, and it takes a toll on the things that we rely on every day um, to do what we do.
So, simple speaking, Airversity's main goal is to educate people on how to be safe.
Yeah, so Airversity has two main goals. One main goal is
Yeah,
about training people so that they're well prepared to operate
yeah,
professionally as as drone pilots. And the other side of the
yeah,
house is to ensure that our customers have
yeah,
effective data, so they can make decisions about how to manage their assets. Um,
yeah.
and make sure that they've got the proper repair schedule, the proper maintenance, and have a better understanding of how the external factors are
Yeah.
impacting those assets.
From what I've seen, I don't think I've seen other companies offer this kind of services before.
Oh, really? Yeah, there are quite a few drone service providers out and about. You know,
I
we, we're not the only
I'm
one.
talking about the part where you actually teach people.
Oh, okay. There are some other companies that do
Yeah,
drone training here in across the country. And so
yeah,
we just want to add to that and make sure that we are connecting to as many customers as possible
yeah,
to ensure that people have a choice when it comes to their training provider,
Yeah.
but also that we can effectively contribute into markets and areas where they may not be reached by others.
I think it's the education part of things for drone pilots is not growing as fast a rate as how the industry is growing.
Well, right now there are 852,000 drone pilots registered with the FAA.
Yeah.
So there are quite a few of us. However,
Yeah.
it's like pilots, jet pilots. You've got some
Yeah.
that have been around for a long time who are very experienced and who fly
Yeah.
lots of different types of, aircraft. And then you have other people that are just starting out. And so you've got a range of experiences in the
Yeah.
industry. And so every project requires a certain skill level. So,
Yeah.
yeah, so we're very mindful of that.
I've talked with three drone manufacturers as of now, including you, and everyone has said that FAA changed their role so much.
Mm.
Is that really true? You see it so often that it's actually quite a headache.
Well, I think what happens is the FAA updates
Yeah.
regulations based on new learning. And so
Yeah.
we have to all be mindful of that. John Paul, this is one industry where I can truly say
Yeah.
that while we are disrupting, we're being disrupted. So when I wake up in the morning and I
Yeah.
read an article, I'm like, it's like, oh my God, who's doing what? It's like here's this new company or here's a regulation, and I'll give you an example. So right now, one of the big things that we're working through is
Yeah.
BVLOS, beyond visual line of sight, and what will allow us to fly longer distances for everything
Yeah.
from drone delivery to how we inspect assets. I mean, you name it, we'll be able to fly beyond what we actually can see, because right now we fly what's called VLOS. So we fly only as far as we can visually see the drone. And we have other people that support us, like visual observers, and you can daisy chain those folks to help you depending on the project. But those are some of the things that will be a game changer to the industry. So we have to be mindful of what's coming and really stay on top of it. But it's a job, and I think for so many industries, not just ours, as we think about artificial intelligence and machine learning, that's going to have an impact on our industry, as well as things like autonomy, as we think about now all these little aircraft flying independently without a pilot, on site. So there's a lot of change happening, and that causes the FAA to have to update, what we do and some of the requirements, even things like remote ID, which basically is a sensor that either you can buy to put on your drone as an aftermarket part, or it's embedded in some drones. And what it is almost like a digital license plate for your drone. So if you're flying and, authorities want to make sure that you're supposed to be there, and you're not some rogue drone, it's like a little license plate in essence. So it's like, okay, yeah, they're supposed to be there. That's who owns that drone. That's what they're doing. So, yeah, a lot of changes and updates, but if you're not ready for that, you've got to you got to buckle up, buckle in, because the changes in how we do what we do are just going to be a part of this for a long, long time.
One of the most part that I've enjoyed within the drone industry, one of the latest innovations is swarm technology. The fact that you can autonomously control hundreds, if not thousands, of drones with just one man is just fascinating to me.
Yeah, I mean, it is going to be it's the wave of the future again.
yeah,
another way to look at this technology. And you see it in things like the drone shows where you got these swarms that
yeah,
are taking these amazing shapes. I mean, unbelievable. But you will start seeing that across other industries. So whether it be
yeah,
delivery, whether it be inspection work, mapping work, agricultural work, in that instance, you will start to see swarms also probably in
yeah,
police work. So yeah, these swarms will become a big part of how we operate, but in very specific use cases. Because at the same time, we don't want 1,000 drones flying over,
yeah,
New Orleans at any one time, because that becomes
yeah,
disruptive to the airspace. And we also have to make
yeah.
sure that there's solid public acceptance, because a lot of people are like, "Ooh, I don't want you to invade my privacy," but I don't think they realize that their phones have given away a lot more privacy than that drone
Yes.
ever will.
Yeah, there's no privacy anymore, so why
You're
bother?
right.
You know, one use of the swarm technology that I think would be a great help in the future, especially is, let's say, even just the search and rescue
Yeah,
operations. When someone is lost in the forest, if you have hundreds of drones covering hundreds, if not kilometers of area, you're gonna find someone very quickly, and I think that's gonna be saving a lot of lives.
agreed. Absolutely. That's a great use case. You're right. You set your waypoints, you let those drones fly, and you'll have, a greater ability to find someone. And if they happen to still have a working phone,
Yeah,
you would be able to fly in also with a payload that offers Wi-Fi so that, it may
yeah.
be one where they can actually then call out from a 911 perspective and say, hey, I'm here, I'm safe, or I'm not safe. So yeah, there's going to be it's a game changer.
What are the biggest challenges that you've encountered when you've switched industry to when you've founded your company now?
Oh, it's been the learning curve, coming from a
Yes.
long history in business and CPG and but I always did work a lot in innovation, so that helped. But, aviation and aerospace is not necessarily anything intuitive. It's not like you go, "Oh, yeah, I can feel how that works." You have to learn the regulations. You got to learn um depending on what part of aviation and aerospace that you're in. I think for me, it's about really appreciating a lot of the laws of aerodynamics, uh, how aircraft flies, um, how you it's photography. I mean, there's so many things that I've had to learn, and I'm still learning around how to operate you're not in the aircraft. There's such a different feeling. Imagine you driving your car, but you're at home or you're standing on the side of the road. It's like, okay, I kind of, I get it, but it would take some getting used to. And so you've got to get used to this kind of this, third person perspective because you're not in it. So you've got to, feel it, but you got to understand also then how to do it safely. Um, and I think people who've grown up in a generation where they've uh, been PlayStation heads, and just gaming period. That being able to use those the game controllers, that is going to help people out so much in this new space because it's about a controller controlling your aircraft.
I think the odd part about that is the fact that you're not genuinely in the aircraft, as you said. I mean, it's like you're playing a game. I mean, you're driving a car. You don't care if you crash. So we have that, I think, embedded in our minds. We're not as careful as we're trying to drive a real car. And I think they need to train and train so much to remove that factor in their brain.
Yeah, exactly. Because, yeah, in this situation, unfortunately, like in gaming, if you crash, one, it's going to cost you a lot of money, depending on how much you spend on your drone. But secondly, you could potentially be creating a significant hazard. Because we have to make sure that we carry a lot of insurance, several different types of insurances. So it has very real world financial penalties and also potentially civil penalties that can result in fines and even imprisonment. So you do not want to crash. Now, things happen, drones get away from you, there are lost links, there are flyaways, those things happen. But if you can demonstrate that you were playing by the rules and you did everything right, your records were right, your maintenance records were right, you were flying properly, you got the right insurances and certifications, then that works in your favor. But if you're just out and you don't have that, it can be a very costly lesson. So no crashing,
You know,
preferably.
you said that even in your old company, your old job, you've always been in kind of in a innovation space. So I want to ask you, what's the difference when you're innovating but you have a big company backing you up than when you're innovating but you're just solo?
Well, it comes, I think it's one of the pretty obvious ones. It's about money and resources. Big companies, they give you a budget, you get a check every 2 weeks, um, and you get it. If the endeavor fails, it's like, okay, we all tried, and then you get to move on to something else. When you're doing this as a startup and you're building your team, you are, seeking capital and raising money and writing for grants and looking for opportunities and growing, you're either bootstrapping or you are getting money through other sources, whether you are, going to investors, and that has to happen after you got a MVP, a lot of, grants. It really is, it's hard. You have a lot more creative leeway to bring your ideas, to life, but you don't have all of those resources and team members and those big, multi-million dollar budgets. And if you fail, it's not like, okay, well, let me go work over in this division now. You got to figure out, like, do I want to stay in this or do I want to go do something different? So, yeah, entrepreneurship isn't for everybody. It's difficult, very much so, but rewarding. High
You know,
risk, high reward.
yeah. Do you think there's a lot of sugar coating when it comes to entrepreneurship that is happening right now in the world?
Absolutely. I think people have glamorized it. And we are definitely in an era of innovation over the last, 20, 25 years. I think when people start seeing companies like Apple and Microsoft grow, and touch, lives on an everyday basis, they touch lives from a corporate basis, from um, a civilian perspective, from a military perspective. I mean, the computer industry has touched everything. And I think that kind of set off a mindset around, now you think about that whole digital aspect of communication, now with phones and apps and now software as a service. It really did spark, I think, this whole new world of entrepreneurship. So you've got people that are creating not only tech solutions, but then non-tech solutions, from, new beverages, new, you name it, and people are creating it. So I think that entrepreneurship is an important part of our future. Um, and it's in our blood now, so you have a lot more entrepreneurs than ever. But I think it's also been highly glamorized. You go, you get this idea, you go get these investors, and it's not that simple. There's a lot of competition for that money. The requirements for using somebody else's money is quite high. They get a big say in what you do because, again, it's their money. Um, and how much of this is you're going to bootstrap so that you can kind of call your own shots. um, but it's very hard work, and so you need to have solid skills, a solid team, great mentors, and you have to learn, because there is a lot of learning in entrepreneurship around how you actually manage a business and then manage your new idea and turn that into a business.
You know, I think the main problem is they're seeing this 5 to 10% of entrepreneurs who is doing better than them, and they think, being an entrepreneur is amazing. But they don't see the other part where there's the 90% of the people, entrepreneurs, who are probably working as hard as them in their companies, or maybe even harder, but are earning less.
Absolutely. I mean, in the early days, it's lean. You might be eating peanut butter sandwiches. um, but it's because you love what you do. Because it's hard to stick with something if you don't love it. If it's like, oh, well, I'll try that. That's going to make me some money. Rarely is there
Y-
anything that's fast money, that's legal. It takes a lot of hard work to be successful. I think there's a
yeah,
there's a quote about I think it's something to the effect of I'm a 5-year overnight success or something like that, where it's like it took me
yeah,
so long to get there, but once you win, sometimes depending on what you're doing, like again, it's high risk, high reward.
yeah,
If you are successful, you can look at all the amazing entrepreneurs that we see in every day, especially across technology. All the big names. Um, think about Jeff Bezos and Amazon, and he went from selling books in his garage to now being one of the
yeah,
biggest companies in the world, and they sell everything. You can get cashews to shoes at your door, usually overnight. So there's a lot, but it does not happen overnight, and you
yeah,
gotta you gotta be in it, and you gotta know how to pivot. You've got to be able
yeah.
to let go when it's not working and move on to something else, because you get attached to the idea. But I always say it's not what you're selling; it's what they're buying, and really understanding
Yeah.
your customer very well.
I think these mega entrepreneurs or even just the successful entrepreneurs, they have a little bit of insanity in them.
Oh
Not
yeah,
as a metaphor, but genuine insanity. You gotta have that.
you got to be a little crazy. You've got to have an ego,
Yeah,
because it's about your your strength, your inner
yeah,
resolve, your commitment to like no, because you're going to hear a lot of no's. And
yeah.
I think at this point in my career, and I started off in sales, I've heard no a million times, and so it's like, okay, what can I learn? What can
Hurts.
I learn from that? And another
Yeah,
saying that I believe in is no. Basically, just means that they need a lot more information, and so that information I'm providing them has to also be rooted in understanding their needs.
yeah,
So you take it as a learning experience, because not
yeah,
everything is for everybody, and sometimes it's a matter of just timing. Maybe they said no, but that doesn't mean no forever. Maybe they said no. Maybe after you tweak it, they'll say yes. Um,
yeah.
and if not, you move on to the next. So it takes a lot of resilience to be in this space too, and still smile and feel good about it, and not be mad at anybody, not taking it personally. Sometimes it might be personal, but you just can't. You got to keep moving. You don't have time.
I think there's a negative connotation when people say ego. They think it's evil, it's the root of problems, but it's not. I think personally, there's two different kinds of ego. There's the one ego where it basically is, I'm so great, so why would I work with you or for you? That's not ego, but people perceive it as ego. That's arrogance. But the ego that is the healthy ego is the part where I know I'm great, so I'm gonna prove it.
Yeah. It's a sense of self, a sense of, this a belief in yourself, self-respect, self-esteem, but really believing in you, because there are going to be days when you're the only one that might believe in you, and you've got to find it deep within to say, you know what? I live another day. And so you get up and you figure, like, okay, I need to reconfigure what I'm doing. I need to change this up.
Yeah,
And you got to find that. And I think Picasso said it best. You got to find that fire in your belly. And it's just like, okay, I'm cooking again. I'm cooking again. But you also have to
yeah,
have some downtime. You can't just go, 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 push, 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 hustle, 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 hustle. You will burn out. And I have burned out several times, and I have to take a break because I'm like, oh my God, I'm sick of this. I don't want to do that. But you have to take a break and then you come back. Um, so it's a lot of that, but you got to have some self-care in there, because if not, you're no good, because you'll be tired, angry, frustrated, agitated, and you've got to have some time to take care of you so that you can learn more. You got to spend some time learning, reading, engaging with people, networking. It's not just the computer and the stuff that you're working on, it's an entire ecosystem that makes it work.
Yeah. Do you think that the best entrepreneurs are the ones that can endure the most stress?
I would say, yeah, yeah. I don't know about the best, but I think they're the ones
Yeah.
that are the most resilient because it is stressful.
Yeah.
And if you've not been through anything before, if you've not heard no, if you think everybody should just accept what you're saying is gold, and uh, you're in for just major, major disappointment. And because people don't have to do anything, they don't have to buy your stuff, they don't have to take your call, they don't have to talk to you, they don't have to mentor you, they don't have to give you money. You've got to make sure that what you are bringing to the market is something
Yeah.
that people want. And having an idea that's a business, surrounding yourself with smart people that help you in areas that you're not
Yeah.
strong or critical. But it gets stressful, and you have to understand and have the maturity to and understand how to deal with stress and how to deal with people, and
Yeah.
still maintain and relationships even if something didn't work. Because if you become upset at every time something goes wrong with somebody,
Yeah.
I don't know how you're going to make life work, because it's people are people and life is life. So yeah, you got to have those life skills and that maturity.
Since we're nearing the end of the podcast and you said you only have 40 minutes, what's your goal or where do you think SEO Air and Airversity is heading in the future?
Well, we are. I'm. The sky is the limit as far as I'm concerned, and with a lot more work, we hope to be, like I said, leaders in the market, um, from all on all fronts, product wise, training wise, as well as services. So, I've been doing this for a little while, so I'm in this, to win it. I'm in, and I say win it. It's not about competition with other people. It's about competition with myself and making sure that what we're doing is meeting the needs of our customers. But I see us as, I don't know if it's a household name, because this industry is not necessarily, it's not B2C, but as a B2B company for the industries that we serve, we certainly do expect to be on the minds of all of the folks that we seek to serve.
Do you have any advice on life?
Yeah, um, follow your passion. If
Yeah.
somebody would have told me as a child who had this amazing love for Star Trek and anything related to space and flying and aircraft, I mean, anything, NASA, all of that. Um, and I
Yeah.
look now coming back at this later on after having done other work. Follow your passion, because therein lies, I think, so much peace and
Yeah.
happiness. And pursue what it is you want to pursue. A lot of people will say, "Oh, I don't know if you should do that and this, that, and the other." Do your homework. Do your homework. Do your
Yeah.
research, your due diligence. But go after what you want to go after. Look to see where there are opportunities. Find mentors that can help you. And I think the other big piece of this is make sure that you're giving back in some capacity.
Yeah.
Give back to other people. It could be from a monetary perspective. You may not have much, but give a
Yeah.
little bit. It could be from a showing up to speak at events, doing
Yeah.
it at no charge. It can be training other people. It can be hiring people that, are looking for some opportunities to grow their skills. There are a lot of ways to give back, because
Yeah.
in that you create that karma, that circle of energy where it returns back to you. So don't be
Yeah.
selfish. Make sure that you're giving in your work.
Fantastic. And where can people find you?
Yeah, so they can find us. We're mostly on Instagram and X.
Yeah.
For Airversity, it's Airversity 107, and then for Zeo Air on X, it is Air XEO, and then on Instagram, it's Zeo Air, XEO Air. We're also on LinkedIn. You can find us on LinkedIn, and our websites are airversity.com,
Yeah.
AIRVERSITY.com. And then Zeo Air is not really a B2C company, but for businesses, we're coming right now. You'll see a note that says that, new product, a new way of thinking, innovation is coming to the drone industry. So that's where we are.
Awesome. And again, thank you for joining us on the New World Podcast.
Thank you so
That's all for today's episode of the New World Podcast. We have explored some fascinating topics with our amazing guests, shedding light on the upcoming New World. If you enjoyed today's episode and today's discussion and want to stay updated the future episodes, don't forget to hit that subscribe button to the podcast. And if you found value on what we have discussed, please consider leaving us a review on your favorite podcast platform. Remember, if you have any questions or topics you'd like us to cover, or if you are interested in being a guest in the future, please feel free to reach out to me via LinkedIn or email me at john.paul@aicinix.com and add New World Podcast, all capital, in the subject line so I can see it. I always love hearing from our listeners. And don't forget to check out our amazing guests. You can find more information about them by the contact details we provided earlier. Again, thank you for tuning in on the New World Podcast. I know your time is very important and I try to always make the next episode better than the last. Until next time, keep learning, keep growing, keep innovating. This is John Paul Flores signing off from the New World Podcast.